Monday night, 7 p.m., 3D Politics. I'm your fine host, Tommy McKay. You can catch me at Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter. As always, I've got the two finest Davids known in Oklahoma, David Van, SoonerPolitics.org, and, of course, David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. And we've got a packed show tonight. We've got to move quickly, and here they are. East Coast update with David Oldham, who's coming to us from the East Coast tonight. Is that correct, David?
Pretty close to the East Coast. I mean,
you're out there east. You're not with us in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma City may host a Republican convention in August. We've got some interesting news about that. The most exciting news we have tonight is Ken Reddick, a candidate for Tulsa Mayor, is going to join us with the Zoom meeting. I cannot wait to encourage him in his candidacy to update our community into a top 10 city. And then, of course, the woke beta male uprising. It's always scary when the beta males rise. And then, isn't it amazing? The pandemic narrative has been forgotten. Everybody needs a mask who doesn't need a mask, and now they don't need a mask at all. Buffalo cops versus an old man, and that did not go well for the old man. The issues with them resigning as well. And then, of course, the big news all over the nation, Minneapolis Council votes to end the police department. So, gentlemen, that is the setup for tonight. I cannot wait for Reddick to get here to just find out what he's all about. I'm excited that he's offering himself for service. What do you guys have this week before we start?
Ken Reddick may be Ken Reddick, but I knew the Tom McKay when he was the conservative candidate 4 years ago.
I got some.
Right. That's when we met, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah, we met. That's correct.
At the Republican Women's Club.
That's correct. Yep. And so we're fixing this world one election at a time.
So what the story for Ken is, his life will never be the same.
Well, it already hasn't been, because his family was threatened, has been threatened already. And there was talk that he was going to get out, and then he's back in, but now he's in for good, and he's so good to hear. Let's do something to change the politics in Tulsa and actually start make it constitutional. That would be awesome.
Yeah, one of the things I want to bring up with him, because one of his desires that he's spoken is to be interviewed and literally debate Bynum on the Pat Campbell show. And I was denied the opportunity to talk on the Pat Campbell show because I had a horrible attitude, according to Pat, who has a fine attitude. But when I was not allowed to go on the show, that robbed the community. That didn't hurt me. That robbed the community of them being able to analyze my ideas. I wasn't just a protest candidate because I was mad at Dewey Bartlett Jr. I had ideas about municipal, cyclical municipal.
Yeah, well, you may not have just been a protest candidate for Dewey, but you also you were a protest candidate against GT as well. So
well, they had identical platforms.
Right.
It was just uncle handing the baton off to cousin, little nephew. I mean. But anyway, that's going to be interesting. But the main reason I bring that up is not to lament like I do so well, but that Ken Reddick, regardless of his attitude or his positions, he should be engaged by the Pat Campbell show, not because Pat Campbell gets to decide who's on his show or not, but because Pat Campbell owes it to the community airwaves. And we all co-own those community airwaves, right? And so he owes it to the community to add these discussions into the mayor's race. And remember, it was just last week I was praising GT for his movement on the PD Live. That was a brilliant move on his part. And they said he caved, and I said, no, he didn't. He wants to provide the body cam footage in a different format.
Well, and you know what? I would say that if Pat Campbell won't provide the forum or any other of the supposedly legitimized media, then perhaps they could come on and 3D Politics could be the forum that hosts these kinds of events, because David and I are already used to hosting these kinds of things. David was the brainchild behind a lot of it, but we put him on as when we ran the Tulsa area Republican Assembly and got the other groups involved. We could do the same thing, because I am fully invested in promotion of alternative media. I mean, the things that we're not even going to talk about this week that came down the end of last week from alternative media, citizen media, was awesome, because they were exposing, and I'm just going to say that in the generic, alternate media.
Right.
Sure.
We're exposing things that no one else was. And so it was OTU, Adrian Otap, had great exposés that need to get out for the rest of the community. And I'm hoping more people will start tuning into places like this, where they can get a different perspective than is being provided by the big names.
So we've got Ken Reddick in the waiting room, and my suggestion, gentlemen, despite our pre-show meeting, let's bring him in. We've already kind of been hammering the mayor's race, and if you're ready, let's just bring him in. Ladies,
let me go ahead and step out, and he can come on into my slot. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ken Reddick, Tulsa candidate for mayor. Ken, thanks for joining us. It's a great opportunity to meet you. I appreciate you and your service for running regardless of the outcome.
Yeah.
It always presses the philosophies of self-governance to have a new, fresh voice in. So thanks for joining us on 3D.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you got involved in politics, and what the main issue is that you're pressing.
So a little backstory on me is I'm born and raised in Tulsa. I'm from East Tulsa. Finished high school down in Allen, Texas. Moved back up here, finished school. Worked for PSO. Went to a trade school. Went to college. Then I went on to work for the University of Tulsa. Finished up my project management certification. Got a couple degrees along the way, a couple certifications. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to start my own contracting business.
Okay.
So
and that's the fencing and roofing business, is that correct?
That's correct. Tulsa Fencing and Roofing Company.
Tulsa Fencing and Roofing. Okay, excellent.
All right.
And so now, what turned you into politics? What got you all fired up to decide to make policy?
So I'm a proud conservative Tulsan, and I am a traditional American, and I didn't see my values represented at City Hall. So there's just a huge lack of leadership there. About 2 years ago, Mayor Bynum reached out to me and asked me to be his appointee for the Sales Tax Overview Committee. And that's when it became very obvious to me that there's a huge lack in fiscal leadership and responsibility in the city.
Wait a minute. Are you saying he was trying to buy you off, or maybe those are my terms?
That is not what he said. You got to keep these guys in check all the time.
But Ken, you didn't join the Hooray for Bynum team. Instead, Bynum is getting more of a critic, right?
That's correct. So it exposed him for the globalist rhino that I always heard that he was, but I never had any firsthand knowledge. After meeting with him a number of times and seeing exactly what that committee was about, I knew things really had to change, and the only way I was going to make a change was to challenge the establishment and maybe influence the conversation at the very least.
One of the things that you're up against that I ran into is the nonpartisan concept of our election.
Correct.
So GT gets to run around here like a purple nonpartisan. Then when he wins, he goes and does a TED Talk pretending to be a Republican mayor in a red state. It's like, well, that's not it at all. And so I'm glad to see you here to set some stuff straight.
Yeah, I'm the litmus test, and he's failed.
So what would be, one of the things that I suffered was people said, you have no experience in government, and we can see how Trump is doing. In my opinion, he's doing a great job, and he didn't have any experience either. But what I found out later, kind of in hindsight, is what they fear from a new guy is not so much his lack of experience, but the power of appointee. That is, there's about 48 or 60 trusts and groups that that you get to appoint people to, either chairmans or otherwise. And so it's not so much what does the new mayor know and what experience does he have that they fear. They fear who you will appoint to the task committees and such.
which changes the agenda of the entire city. So if we can appoint people with the same values as your normal Tulsan, your normal small business owner, your normal parent that's got concerns and wants to be involved and wants to contribute to the city, then we can change the outcome of Tulsa completely. We can build better partnerships. We can have safer neighborhoods. I mean, we're not beholden to anyone. So we go in there and we actually do what's best. We implement our normal practices, things we've learned along the way to be successful in our own careers. So not to be a career politician or to come from a family of career politicians, I think is a good thing.
Hey, let me reset this. If you're just joining us, we've got Ken Reddick, a Tulsa mayor candidate here this year. And I've also, of course, got my two Davids with me, David Vann and David Oldham, here to press Ken about all of the issues here in Tulsa. Ken, what is the number one policy, either change or direction you'd want to do? If you got in, what's, the day one routine? What's that?
So I think we need to work, especially with the current atmosphere, with the riots and, the shutting down of small businesses. We need to have a better working relationship between City Hall and the public. So I would like to implement the policy that was created in the urban areas of Indianapolis. It was called the 10-Point Coalition. I would like to create a cabinet position. We send someone to Indianapolis for so many weeks. We bring them back, and that person is fully trained with the successful practices of that organization. And right. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Their crime rates are down drastically.
And this is their crime rates. And where are the crime rates down?
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Okay.
So in the urban areas of Indianapolis. So okay. That being said, we would have a trained cabinet position that would reach out to the churches, the small businesses, the schools, the PTAs, the HOAs, everything, the small business owners, and he would just, his only goal would be to build a common ground between all the institutions of the city of Tulsa. That would be day one. I think the most important thing to me is also to send a message that Tulsa cares for its hardworking families. And I think I would immediately move towards whatever it took to remove the sales tax on groceries in the city of Tulsa. The city's portion of a sales tax on groceries in the city of Tulsa, which would be roughly about 3.6%, 3.6 cents on the dollar. So I think that would send a huge message. It would also, drive interest for people to come shop in Tulsa, for families to do their shopping in Tulsa. It would be a huge driver. It'd be a huge economic driver. And I think if you implemented those two policy agendas, I mean, we would make huge strides towards our common goals.
And GT pushed the Vision 2025 package back right before the mayor's race, and that package that he and his uncle promoted will bring us a 62.5% tax increase in city sales tax in Tulsa coming up in 2021, July 1st. Right. Sales tax will explode by 62.5%, and this is something that GT brought us. Before he was even elected, he promoted with his uncle to raise taxes. And so also he promoted the gathering place, which we can't gather at any, which was a bad investment. Even if you couldn't foresee the pandemic, I've been saying for years, socialism is a bad investment. And this proves that out. Same thing with mass transit. We got all these cute little out of place aero buses that don't really fit. And you can only put 12 people on a bus. That was another bad investment. Right. By GT. More of this, he continues to want to combine. He wants to have privately owned entities that are controlled by government. The zoo, the BOK, the PAC, which we paid $1 million for planning for the Vision 2025 package. Oh, that's not. We don't even own that as citizens anymore. That's sold to a trust. And so, I mean, he has just sold the whole package out from underneath.
Oh yeah.
And
you're absolutely right.
Guy you ever want to meet? I told him he's the nicest fascist I ever knew.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's a nice guy. I had a recent post on my Facebook page, and I said he's a great guy, but he's a terrible mayor.
He's a very friendly fella.
So
absolutely.
my concerns always are spending, I mean, we talk about taxation a lot, but
Mhm.
the real problem is the spending. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. We have
What
no
would
conservative values. I mean, when this whole crisis hit, I think the rainy day fund only had $6 million in it, and Tulsa collects roughly $900 million every year. I mean, that's terrible. We should have a better savings plan. We should be a lot more conservative with our dollars.
what would be some of the programs that you would want to see scaled back or cut so that we could get in, become more conservative, as you put it?
So I think we need an audit. To be honest with you, we need to bring in a third party. We need to run an audit. We need to see where the waste is at. To say that, never being in office and not creating the budget, to say that I think, to just do a penny plan or to say we just need to slash it immediately, I think would be naive. Also, the city of Tulsa is one of the largest employers in the entire area. So with just over 3,000, almost 4,000 employees. So I think a city audit would do us a lot of good. There obviously is a lot of waste. I mean, if you look at all the bureaucratic positions we have, I know for a fact that, people such as Anna America, the head of parks, isn't a conservative or fiscally minded. So that being said, I mean, we should probably just run an audit, and then we should have a more aggressive plan for saving. But if we also have a plan that generates and sells Tulsa and drives people to come to Tulsa, if we're going to have a sales tax model for our funding, we need to drive those dollars. So I think we need a two-part plan. We need to be more efficient, more conservative with our dollars, have a better savings plan, but also look to ways that actually drive people to want to shop in Tulsa, spend their money in Tulsa.
Yeah.
Man, what do you got?
Yeah, Ken, I remember in the early 90s, Roger Randall started this thing called the Mayor's Action Center. And you could just simply call up a 7-digit phone number back in those days, and bam, you got somebody from the mayor's office and you got an answer. And now it's push this, then wait for that, and then hear a little bit of Espanol, and then, it's nuts. And if that's a indicator of how big our bureaucracy is, it's right. Sad. But here's the thing, I'm really disappointed. Last Thursday night, I had to call 911. Somebody who was reached out to me who was suicidal, and I had to get him somebody after talking to him on the phone for a while, and I just couldn't get him to tell me where he was. Well, my God, 8 minutes while somebody's suicidal, just waiting for the right department to answer so you can tell them whether you need police, fire, or medical.
Right.
This really? Is a problem.
Emergency took you that long?
Yes. So, I'm looking at these things that when we first started them were fantastic, just like all the great swimming pools we had all over America's most livable cities back in the 70s, and now they're all filled in. Things start out good, and then the bureaucracy takes over. I'm wondering, what would 4 years of a Reddick administration look like? What were the things you'd like to see most changed from just 4 years of serving as mayor?
I think we need to build better partnerships with the entire county. We need to share services. We need to have better land leasing policies. We have no agricultural leasing policies whatsoever. There's just a lot of wasted land, a lot of wasted functions, a lot of lost dollars. We need better partnerships with our our sister cities, our neighboring cities. So if we could share services, maybe, like 911 services or fire or medical, maybe we need to just streamline services on that, in that field. So to be honest with you, Tulsa is just really inefficient. We try to stand alone. We try to do everything different, and you lose a lot of dollars that way. We don't have a lot of partnerships with the cities around us. We're really inefficient. We're not contractor friendly. We're not small business friendly. There's regulations that hurt small businesses, and then the ones that help the people that like to rip off the small business. There's no watchdog service. I mean, we've got this huge bureaucratic system that's really doing nothing but serving itself. So if we had a more policy or citizen driven, stakeholder driven agenda coming from City Hall, I think it would serve Tulsa a lot better.
Mhm. Yeah.
Ken, were you tuned in at all to the meeting that Mayor Bynum had with the hashtag Can't Breathe people? Did you see?
No,
footage?
I saw highlights from it. Yeah.
You know, I was, of course, an opponent, you know, exactly, and then have been a critic since of Mayor Bynum. But I took a 180-degree turn when I watched him handle the pressure point of the racist comments, et cetera, and all the racism. And I was impressed with his ability to negotiate what he called he says, within about a half hour, he says, here is a consensus statement I can agree with. And this is during racial tension, high pressure stuff. I was very impressed with the man who didn't allow the meeting to go on and exacerbate the heat. He said, look, here's something I think we all can agree on, because I know I can agree on it. The people, the hashtag Can't Breathe people, their problem is the advertising driven pressure driven, it pushes people to sign waivers under duress for advertising dollars, and they don't like that. Mayor Bynum wants transparency with the police department, and Regina Goodwin, she wants body cams going 24/7 even when they go home. So So the point is, Bynum made a good move, in my opinion, by saying, look, here's what I can agree to. No more live PD, because that removes the financial advertising from it, but we'll still maintain transparency by finding a way in the next 2 weeks to get the footage of transparency through body cams on YouTube. It was a perfect, my opponent made a better move than I could have. I thought he did better than I could have in that pressurized racial situation. So, I mean, how do you feel about that move on the Tulsa PD, live PD, all that other?
So, honestly, at first I thought it gave Tulsa a bad name, and it stemmed from, long story short,
You mean the live PD gave Tulsa a bad name?
Correct. I think there are too many shows that showed that capitalized on the crime in the Tulsa area. You had Live PD, the First 48. If you were outside of Tulsa and you never visited Tulsa, you thought there's a lot of shows being broadcast from Tulsa on a national scale. You know, there must be a lot of crime in Tulsa. And I first received that opinion from the outside looking in when we went to a comedy show at the Hard Rock. And his joke, and I mean, he was taking that joke nationwide, was, you know, the cities on Tulsa, or the cities on those shows, and then he mentioned Tulsa by name, do not visit, you know, those towns, you know, do not visit those cities. And I thought, wow, it really is giving us a bad name on the outside looking in. So at first I thought, I don't think it's in the city's best interest, especially, okay, so if a show exists and they just choose to come here as a free company, just exercising their right, and then the Tulsa Police Department makes a deal to let them travel around and record with them, that's one thing. But for a mayor to represent a city and then to sign a contract to sell that city, its citizens in their worst moments, experiencing the worst things that's probably going to happen in their life, I thought was a bad thing. I had a couple people reach out to me. They're associated with the FOP, and the police viewed it differently. They viewed it as transparency. Look at the good we're doing in the community. And I really understood exactly where they were coming from. Right. So they used it as a vessel to actually show to be transparent and to show good practices and, policing on their part. So I understood exactly where they were coming from.
Ken, can you stick around for another segment? Because I want to make sure that the Vans get a chance to ask. Yeah. I want to actually press the Van and Oldham on the same question I had for Reddick about the mayor. What do you guys think? And at the end of your comments, I'll set up the show again, and we'll keep Ken around. But I mean, the thing is, I was an opponent of GT. I've been criticizing him for, as long as he's been around, and all of a sudden last week I was like, good job, GT. So do you think I'm right on giving him that credit?
Well, I would say from a political standpoint, he did a fabulous job. From a constitutional standpoint, it was horrible. Because first off, while we have goods and bads with Tulsa, with Live PD, less so with the first 48, but Live PD I can't get through virtually without retching any particular show, because the number of constitutional violations are ridiculous. And even here in Tulsa, I love the fact that we are exposing them, but the problem is they are going unanswered and they're going unchallenged in the courts. I'm hoping for a mayor that will actually do his job and oversee the police department appropriately.
Okay, Van,
that has never been done.
Yeah,
Van, give me a minute and then we'll reset.
Yeah, no, Ken, I'm more interested in what's your team looking like? Are you getting some support out there? Have you got some people helping you get your message out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we're getting a lot of good people reaching out to us. A couple college Republican clubs. So the youth and the young students in the area are reaching out. You know, it's kind of falling apart. A lot of them aren't on campus, but the more local ones from the two major campuses have reached out. And we've had a couple dozen volunteers reach out, and they're really excited. We were just waiting to really build up and be able to take off. I don't like that staggered takeoff. I want to implement, the entire marketing platform all at once.
I believe the Republican Men's Club has got an event going on Wednesday. Are you planning to be a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a Zoom event. And so when's the primary, the big showdown? When is that?
August 25th. If no one breaks 50 plus 1%, then the top two vote getters go to a runoff on the general election, November 3rd.
Okay. Now, so far there's you have filed. Who else has filed? Today's the first day, right?
I'm under the impression that it's only been myself and Mayor Bynum.
Oh, okay.
That's all I've seen.
Surprisingly.
I like the focus.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Valhalla. So
no, that's great, because that gives you a distinct advantage as a competitor, because
absolutely.
You can't be overshadowed or anything like that.
And just to put everybody at ease, Paul Tay is still serving a 9-month sentence, so we don't expect him in this race.
So more comments coming up, and we want to really thank Ken Reddick for coming out and showing us what he's going to do coming up next election season. But again, Tommy McKay here with 3D Politics Live right here on Facebook. I've always got David Van from SoonerPolitics.org, and of course David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. And so, Ken, as we head into this next season, how can we, I will tell you, and I think I speak for both Davids here, and they'll tell me if I don't, but I mean, if there is a moment where you would like to join us, we do this every Monday. And okay. I can tell you that I already competed with GT and was unable to defeat him in the election. I'd like to help you compete. And so if you want to join us on this forum, we'd love to have you back anytime you want to update us on what's going on. But how would you have handled the mask situation? I was criticizing GT Bynum, suggesting that even if your opinion was that you did agree with the CDC, I would still have come out and said my decision is this, and it just so happens to agree with the CDC. But I thought he looked like he was just bending over for the nationalists. So how would you handle if you're mayor? How would you have handled the mask situation that everybody got up about?
I think he could have done a lot better job of just educating the public without being so bitter about anyone that disagreed with him. So it seemed like anytime anyone disagreed or questioned his policies, I mean, it was like, challenging the gospel. So I would have just done a better job of educating the public, helping people stay aware, educating them on sanitary habits, safe distancing. I think we could have facilitated, as a large city, we could have facilitated a lot more help for small businesses instead of just moving into a 100% shutdown and lockdown.
Yeah, Van, what do you got?
Ken, I just got a 6-word primer for you with the educating and getting the word out. It's GT Bynum's made it very good. It's 6 words. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
That's
He liked
kind
that
of
phrase.
he used it during the floods last year. He's using it during the pandemics this year, and it's that using of shame and the condescension and the put down. You know, it's like I live at 31st and Lewis, and you don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Ken, anybody else got something for Ken before we pressed him pretty hard?
So the question is, would you have shut down Tulsa, or because, and that, as a constitutionalist, and if you know anything about me, that's what I'm all about, because that's what you're going to swear to, is to uphold the Constitution. So
absolutely,
the question is, what would you have done, and what do you see? Do you see his actions with COVID as constitutional?
No, I think he violated a lot of people's rights. You can't just come in and shut down. He doesn't have the right to shut down businesses or churches in the manner that he did. I mean, he killed the livelihood for a lot of families. So, or being able to provide, pay your bills. I mean, there for a while there was about a 30-day shutdown for us. So, that being said, I think he violated a lot of people's rights and liberties and freedoms.
And he may have the authority.
I'm now smiling because that's awesome.
It's like I said, a city should facilitate health and safety and regulations and education for its citizens. It should not treat them as prisoners inside of some kind of confinement, or this wasn't some concentration camp. And that's what we felt like. We felt like we were all being herded together, locked down. Police had their the soft hand on everything. But
Ken, one more time, I want to thank you for coming and joining us. I got one more question for you. One of my main issue as mayoral candidate in 2016 was my concept was to extend the lifespan of cyclical municipal regulations, licenses, fees, etc. Because if you are a person who's a hair cutter, you may pay a $25 license a year to cut hair. Well, if you would just simply extend that to double it to where $25 covers that barber for 2 years, it doesn't impact the city, because registration or licenses, fees, and registrations like that are only about 10% of the city budget. Yeah. And so, but when you take a business that's in the oil business that has vehicles and hazardous chemicals, etc., the licenses and fees and regulations are high. And so that makes a big deal to somebody who has vehicles that they have to re-register every year. And if just by simply extending the lifespan of the cyclical municipal regulations, that gives a boon to the small business and doesn't barely affect the city. So I want to hope that you'll think about that.
You're preaching to the choir. And I'm glad you brought that up. You're preaching to the choir on that one. I'm a tradesman, and I've spent a lot of hours in school, building up my resume just to do what I do. So I know exactly what you're talking about, coming back and asking permission of the state every 12 months if I can still practice my skill, my trade skill. So yeah, you're right.
Okay, now I got to jump in.
Right.
We were almost had you out, Ken.
Well, I'm gonna make a statement and ask you to think about it, because I don't want to pin you down to something that other people will. But as a tradesman, and I'm a tradesman, and Dave's a tradesman,
and Tom.
Tom's a tradesman. But in my profession, there are parts of it have permits and licenses, and others don't. As a constitutionalist, I say any obstruction to liberty is a violation of our rights. And so therefore a permit or a licensure is a violation of rights. And I would ask you to think about that, because as a business license, hey, do I not have the right to do business? Do I not have the right to practice whatever occupation? Right. And I don't want to pin you down to that, but I want you to, I would hope you would think about it.
Well said.
As mayor, it's going to be important.
The big piece is, Ken, if you win the election, you get a free 3D Politics t-shirt. So there's your goal.
Oh, there we go.
That's what you That's why you're running now. So when they
Yeah.
Hey, Ken Reddick, I really appreciate, first of all, your service as a candidate for mayor to bring your ideas and your effort to politics here in Tulsa. And thanks for joining the 3D Politics
Oh,
team
thank you.
here on Monday.
Thank
And again, I want to open the invitation. Anytime you want to talk, please just let us know. We'll bring you right in.
Okay.
Ken Reddick, once again, Tulsa mayoral candidate right here on 3D Politics. Thanks for joining us once again, Ken.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
There we go. Thanks, Ken. I had to find the button. Hey, that was really great. I appreciate him being here. That adds a lot to our show. A new up-and-coming star and somebody who's already got some experience looking over the books of the Tax Oversight Committee and finding out, wow,
I found that interesting that he got the interest to run once he saw the books. And I think that's important for everybody who might be listening, is once you see what's going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain of Oz, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, we got to do something.
City, up there in Oklahoma City, they may very well host the Republican convention in August, and Van is going.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I think I need you to let the producer back in the room.
How did that happen?
Well, he had to step out so that Ken could come into the fourth square. We play four squares here.
You should be admitted. There you are.
There we go.
Little freak. I'm like the government. I make Van ask permission. There.
Yeah.
How to get your permit.
Daryl Hall. No, it was really just simply Daryl Hall.
Yeah. Well, I want to say this, and let me make sure we've got it up here so you guys can see this. Matt Pinnell, one of the things that's a benefit of Matt being, actually, he was the number 2 on the list to be the RNC chief. In fact, he was the insider favorite until Michigan went for Trump, and then Trump decided he needed Ronna McDaniel to be the RNC head. So anyway, I saw this in the Oklahoman today, and it's state official pitches Oklahoma as a site for the Republican National Convention. And I tell you what, there's a chance if anybody can get it done. I think Matt Pinnell can get it done.
I think so.
You and I went to SRLC. That was the last time the RNC was part of a big deal in Oklahoma City. And
Sure.
and I think it went off well, went off without a hitch. And we'll see what happens.
None of the candidates knew what made America great. That was the only problem.
Right. Yeah.
Trump hadn't
didn't
even
show up.
Trump hadn't even he hadn't announced. He
That's
might
true.
have even announced that weekend, but he hadn't announced yet, so he wasn't there.
Yeah. So
when I saw this picture, I thought he was endorsing basketball privilege, but I could be totally wrong.
Now, in all fairness, that was Trump at the Oklahoma County Fair.
Yes.
I don't call it the state fair. It's Oklahoma County Fair.
Hey, we call it the Tulsa State Fair. They can call it the Oklahoma State Fair. They're both county fairs. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
And neither one will acknowledge that they're a county fair. Now it's weird because in California, they have the Sacramento County Fair and they have the California State Fair. There are 2 totally separate locations and are 2 totally separate events aside from everything else. But we don't have such an animal in
right. Iowa, Minnesota, Oklahoma. Texas, so many of them are like that. Oklahoma just does their own thing. But you know what? As Pinnell would say, it's all about branding,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, we'll see what happens. It might be nothing at all, just like the Tesla auto plant coming here might be nothing at all.
The fact that, I don't want to just throw me under the bus, but for the last 40 years, who knows who the lieutenant governor is. I mean, you don't even know the guy's name or her, it, whatever it is.
Oh, we knew. With
You're Oldham. You're an
We
odd.
don't
what's
have a
his
life.
name?
You knew it, but nobody, I'm saying normal people, not you, Oldham. Normal people.
Come on, he went to every
Pennell.
chamber of commerce,
Pennell.
every county chamber of commerce throughout the state.
Talk
every
about
year.
branding. Talk about branding. Pennell. I know who Pennell is, and that's tells you something,
Yeah.
right?
Well, he's a high energy guy, very people person, you know. But I want to say, I'm going to make one exception to what you're saying, Tom, and that was about 20 years ago when a little lady walked into the Senate chambers and picked up the gavel and said, "We're bringing up the bill to bring right to work to vote of the people."
Boy,
it was
if
the
only
most
she had continued in that vein.
Mary Fallon used to have courage. And I just want to remind people of that. So when you see a young politician with courage, you say you could end up to be Mary Fallon.
Well, the real thing is continue in that courage.
Exactly.
Quit working for yourself and work for the people.
Yeah. But Tom, an important point I need to say in why this is even an issue is that if you go to a state for your national convention that's controlled by Democrats on any link of the chain, and they start throwing rules and regulations, and they claim in the name of health and science-driven, data-driven, and try to say, just like the Attorney General of Michigan did to Trump last month, where he said, "I don't want you back here. You didn't wear a mask at the Ford plant tour." Yeah,
right.
So
well, and just so everybody understands, the reason we're looking for a new place, or that the Republican Party is looking for the new place, and the Democrats may be doing the same thing. I don't know. I just don't pay attention to them. But the reason that the Republicans are looking for a new place is that Charlotte, North Carolina, which was slated to host the Republican National Convention.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte, North Carolina has made overtures that they don't know that they're going to be open for business, that they won't require mask wearing of every attendee.
Mm-hmm.
And I know attendees who will not attend if they are forced to wear a mask in attendance. President Trump said he is not interested in appearing in something where there are these draconian requirements being made. The problem is that I have with everything is nobody is stepping up on the Republican side and saying, you don't have the right to tell us what to do.
You guys probably don't know this about history, but back during the Renaissance, they used to have COVID-19 parties. They were called masquerades, and you were forced to wear a mask. Couldn't get in the door.
Those were private.
Sure,
unless they were thrown by the crown.
Yeah.
But hey, those were all fun.
Yeah. King Louis the 14th didn't come around till there was a King Louis the 13th. If you're just joining us, you're watching 3D Politics Live right here on Facebook. I'm Tommy McKay, your fine host, every Monday at 7 p.m. for 3D Politics, all the important stuff that's going on here in Oklahoma with David Vann from SoonerPolitics.org, and of course David Oldham, our constitutional expert with constitutionalgrounds.com. Now, I want to ask you guys a question about, did you see the video? Well, look, we're running out of time. We got 15 minutes to cover 10 more topics. I'm going to skip a lot of stuff here before we move. One of the things we
have a lot of stuff that's really important to talk about too.
Before we move, because I'm just going to get this out there real fast, and I want to hear you guys' comments, and then we'll move to either the woke beta, the forgotten mask, the Buffalo Cops, the old man, and then we know
skip the woke beta.
So we'll skip woke beta, but we know eventually we're going to get to the Minneapolis council votes in police. We'll definitely get to that. But I want to ask you guys, because I'm burning inside about wanting to know what you think. I believe in Jesus, and I believe in prayer, and I love children, and I think cops are mostly good. And they had a child praying over a cop here, and then not only did they catch it the first time, and they thought, man, that was so viral, let's do it again. It was like Iwo Jima, it's like, let's set it up again. Let's do that Saturday Night Live again. They continue. So now for me, I believe it's simple exploitation of a child, even though I agree with all their little angles. I'm just saying, when you start using the child as your prop. Yeah, Van.
Every movement, every cause needs a Greta. And we had to have a Greta for this one.
I sent them my headshot, but they rejected me. They said I was too old.
You're also not female. But
what do you think about what I'm saying? Should they use the children?
Well, the children are willing to be used, because these children are not ignorant of what is going on.
Ban statutory rape?
No.
They do.
The narrative I heard is this was just a spontaneous thing that somebody happened to snap a picture of.
The first one.
Yeah.
Well, but remember, these children, as you call them, watch this stuff. They see what's going on, and they then go out and copycat. And so that.
What do you got, Van?
I'm telling you, to me, that is this was the most wholesome thing. If it truly is organic, if it truly is, our kids want to pray for police officers. That's probably the best message I've heard in the last 2 weeks.
Well, the only problem I have is the prayers they're offering are not, I hope this officer actually obeys the Constitution. That is not being prayed for them, and that needs to be the prayer.
I don't know that I want Oldham to be the one to approve my prayers.
Is that not a great prayer? Yes, that's a great prayer. Obey the law. Yes, please, officer, I pray that you would obey the law and find Jesus. It's like all encompassing.
Oldham will make the children pray 5 times a day.
Remember, the law is often nothing
and East Mecca or Jerusalem, one or the other, right?
All right, so we got some latitude there. But yeah, I'm just going to ask people, go to 3D Politics on Facebook. You'll see the story about the woke beta male. And I tell you, Howie Carr makes a humorous takeoff on the man bun and the ponytail boy and Obama's pajama boy. So enjoy that. Let's get that over with. The other thing I want to say, just moving ahead really fast, is everybody got their protest discredited in the month of May if they weren't wearing a mask. And it was the quickest way that the left could discredit a lot of our friends who were arguing and protesting for opening our economy back up. They says, well, you aren't wearing masks. And it was like the easiest way to dismiss your constitutional point. Right. All of a sudden here, and you'll see it on 3D Politics Live on Facebook, is Channel 4, Sacramento, KRON. They actually twisted the county health departments, which said protests of up to 100 people will be approved beginning January 15th. But churches are still not allowed to have indoor meetings either, even after that.
January 15th?
I'm sorry, June. Thank you. June 15th. And KRON twisted it to say you can have up to 100 people in protests now, but church events have to remain outdoors and be 10 or less right now. So,
and I have to say that is awesome, because they have yet again exposed their duplicity and the fact that they are not applying the law equally.
Right.
Or even their illegal orders equally.
What it showed is the TV stations are actually twisting things to make people more encouraged to do certain protests, but also discouraging and discrediting other protests.
Exactly. Well, and I'm hoping my friend, I've got a friend in New Jersey who I'm hoping to see in the next few days. And she has got nearly a dozen citations, all $1,000, for protesting the closure orders over the last month or month and a half.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that these things will just give cause to overturn everything, because they're not being consistent in everything.
Right. Now,
they're not issuing these orders for the Black Lives Matter people.
Yeah. Now, on our, I believe it was March 16th, the day before St. Patrick's Day, when we met, and we heard Bynum, talking about coming down with these orders. And I said, I just want to give you fair warning now. I reserve my right to petition my government for redress of grievance, and full right to peaceable assembly. What I didn't expect in all this is people for the civil rights, most of them who are on the left, they're actually making my argument for me. They're saying we have a right to protest. And on that, we agree with them.
Yeah.
Right.
To the point where I've said in my most radical statement to date, if they try to shut us down over another supposed virus, let's just join the rioters and burn this place down. I mean, I'm not going to wear a mask. I'll just go around and break windows and burn the damn place down. And I'm not inciting a riot. I'm just joining one. That keeps me out of the problem.
Well, and I have to say, and we'll get to what I'm doing in a minute, but the Black Lives Matter protests that I've been around and that I've witnessed have been peaceful. They've been loud. They've been raucous. They've tried to shout other protests that were going on at the same time.
They had a good beat. You danced to them.
But the point was that they were peaceful. They weren't doing the rioting. There are bad actors in amongst the crowd, and we'll talk about that and what peaceful protesters should be doing about that as they go on, as we move on in the show.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm just going to quick share this screen.
Bring it up.
Okay. So, I plan all these things, and then they're like, okay, no, where are they? Yeah, so we've got the Buffalo thing going on, and Tom, I don't have it. There's exclusive that, here we go. The cops are saying, look, we aren't necessarily in solidarity with the two suspended officers, but we resigned from this riot task force for other reasons, and I think Oldham has some of that.
Yeah, they when you shared this with us, and I had not heard of this. I'd been busy for a couple of days, and you shared this with me, and I'm like, there's got to be more to this story. So I looked at some other sites and some other news reporting of this. It turns out that what the story is that the two Buffalo police officers were forced to well, I should say the other day, let's give the backstory. First off, for those who haven't heard, in Buffalo there was a protest. There was an old gentleman, he was in his 70s, and he went in with a riot helmet under his arm and pushed an officer in the line. He was then pushed back and ended up falling over, and the officers were suspended for having pushed him. And
suspended without pay, essentially a firing of a undetermined amount of time. It's
generally when that sort of thing happens, it ends up in a firing, but we haven't seen the firing yet. They are currently suspended, probably in process of termination.
Being charged with assault as well.
And they're being charged with assault. So with that, after that process, 57 members of the riot squad resigned from the riot squad. They did not resign from the police force, and that is vital information to note. They resigned from the riot squad. The initial article indicated or seemed to imply that they, well, I was left wondering, why did they all resign? So I looked around, and while it was not necessarily in defense of the two officers, what it turns out it looks like it is that they are upset that the city is not going to support whatever the officers are doing on the riot squad. In other words, that the city is not going to legally support the riot squad when they act. And it didn't get, I couldn't find any more specifics than that. But that the city was not going to support their quelling of riots the way they have been quelling them. And without that legal support, the FOP and the police officers themselves were not going to continue supporting or participate in the riot control.
Van is going to respond to that right after I reset. We are at the 8 o'clock hour on 3D Politics Live right here with Tommy McKay, your fine host. We've got David Oldham and David Van every week at 7 p.m. right here. And Van, what's your comment?
Well,
it sure feels like 9 o'clock.
You were the last one talking. So.
It's still light out here. You're in the dark. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is, if you look at the video, and if it was a crime scene, I don't know of it. It looks like it was just after curfew and they were sweeping the place. This is a place that had been a crime scene 2 days earlier. Somebody literally started City Hall on fire. This was right outside City Hall on the plaza. Right. So they're moving people out. Oldham is going to tell you, a blanket curfew is unconstitutional. But he will agree, if it's a crime scene, then it's definitely legitimate police powers to at least protect the crime scene. Okay. Correct. So at least we know our situation. And this old man comes up to him holding his helmet to protect his head, holding it under his arm, where it didn't do him any bit of good. When he was finally pushed back by two officers, these two officers were given their orders by superiors. Okay. A police supervisor. That's important. Because what the rest of these officers are saying is, wait a minute, when the boss tells us move, it's time to move, and the boss needs to take responsibility, or at least protect him and say, he was following my orders, take it on me. I mean, if it had been military, the officers are not nearly as liable as
other way around.
The officers themselves.
It's the commanding officer of a platoon is the one who takes the heat for what he orders his men to do.
Right. Correct.
And they didn't do that here. They left the frontline cops out to dry. Keep in mind, the frontline cops, I got 2 points on this. Number one, it was after 2 or 3 times, telling him, move back. And then the officer said, come on, move. Then they pushed the guy. I counted at least 7 steps the guy took before he fell, okay? So to say they pushed him down, they pushed him back. And that's going to be an important thing if this goes to...
Yeah, but at his age, it might take him 7 steps, and he can't catch his balance.
Okay, and that plays right into my next point. If he had been a middle 40s, 6'6" black guy, would we say you were using excessive force?
Probably.
Well, I don't think so.
I mean, who could know? But we do know that the narrative is. They go with the narrative. We've seen the fact that they won't carry the narrative of police violence when it is not racially motivated.
Don't know
the
who
media themselves.
The media. Okay.
The
mob.
legitimate media, the mob media.
The mob, right? And so
that's a real thing, because we have I saw somebody posted a Somali cop in it was Detroit or something like that, killed a white guy, and nothing said.
Yeah, I was trying to get the point that if you want equal rights, where everybody's treated the same, do you really? Because how many people say he pushed a woman like that? Oh, I'm sorry. So we're not supposed to push women as hard, but it's okay to beat up on men, or it's okay to beat up on young men, but not old men, and things like that. So we got some things we need to establish a policy that people are going to know the cops need to know, how am I supposed to conduct things here? I mean,
Absolutely.
The mob has hung them out to dry. City Hall has hung them out to dry. And now it looks like their police unions hung them out to dry.
Well, remember, the police were acting, and as you alluded earlier, I'm going to say curfews are unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
We are not talking an insurrection. We were not even talking a riot at the time that they pushed the guy. We are talking a curfew that they were going to enforce. The curfew is unconstitutional. It violates our First Amendment rights, because there is no time limit on when we can hold a protest.
And Oldham, I'm sure you agree with me. If there's any place that's most appropriate to protect First Amendment free speech, it's on the steps of City Hall.
Oh, absolutely.
Your right of redress of grievance. And what is the thing they're going to first clear out? Is City Hall.
Well, that's what they were doing, and that's tyranny. The point is that no one has the right to dictate in public space. Yeah. The public forum is public. The only thing, and again, this comes down to regulation versus prohibition in dictates. The government only has the right to uphold or to regulate safety within that space. They do not have the right to prohibit you from being in that space. As someone mentioned to me yesterday, remember, in their capacity as civil servants, we are a 10, they are a 9. Mm-hmm. They cannot overrule with their 9 a 10. We can be there. We cannot act inappropriately. They have the ability to then bring order, but they cannot be saying you can't be there.
Where does the freedom of association through, like what I would call, remember we had the show about the topless women last year, and my argument was like, there should be the ability of a community to agree we're going to do things in this community that are not necessarily constitutional. We have housing developments where your house is regulated by the housing people in your neighborhood. And it's
no, you don't have that. They don't have that right. The Constitution.
If I want to have a group with bylaws and have the bylaws be what I want the bylaws to be, that's my business.
No, it's not, because then what you're saying is they don't own their property.
No. You're conflating two things. Ordinances are one thing, where the city comes down and says what your neighborhood can or can't do. That's a separate thing from a private association of condominium owners or something like that. When they enter into a binding contract, that's a separate thing. That's not a government thing.
That may be, and there are times that can be okay. The problem is, and especially here in Oklahoma, is that HOAs are required by law, which makes them subject to the Constitution.
Wait a minute. What do you mean they're required by law?
Yes, their HOAs are a de facto part of the government in Oklahoma because they are in statute. For instance, when you have a new, and I'll have to find the statutes that list this out. But Lori's told me about this numerous times because she has served on her HOA board. But when they form a new, or when they create a new subdivision, a new housing project, it is required by law to have an HOA attached to it. And,
Only if there's restrictive covenants.
no, this is law. It's in
For
statute.
some of our
I will find it and get back
Okay.
to us and
For
talk
some
about
of
that.
our viewers,
The point is that these
what is
people,
an HOA for some of our viewers?
Homeowners association.
right, a homeowners association with
Okay.
the bylaws. The problem is that those
I
bylaws
knew that.
must be constitutional if it is required by statute, because they become a de facto part of the government. And so they cannot, therefore, limit your private property ownership, which they virtually all do,
Okay.
because private property is just that, private property.
Well,
When you-
Dan, what do you got for me?
we have fundamental disagreements here, so I think we both need to research this thing and we can have a more enlightened
Sure.
conversation.
Sure.
But that was actually just an analogy. We were on our whole point here about what the police officers had or didn't have in the way of protections. We're talking about, curfews. My thing is, unless they are actually protecting a live crime scene, then what a curfew becomes is essentially a prior restraint,
Correct.
where we're limiting you because we're afraid of what you might do. And I'm using
that's
that term.
Isn't that what we experienced with COVID when we had a 60-day curfew, 24 hours? Unless
Right.
you had a good excuse to be out, you were curfewed into your home.
Right, but we did it differently than our standard quarantines of the last 100 years have been, whereas if there was clear and specific evidence that tied you specifically, then you were limited.
Well,
This is because we don't know, we're therefore going to limit you.
correct. Well, and that's a bill. That's an attainder. That's an order of attainder, because it never passed the legislature. So it was an order from the governor of
That's right.
attainder, which the governor, by the way, the governor's executive orders have no effect on you and me. None. Zero. Because they only affect the people working for the governor. Because
Yes,
all he can do. He cannot order us. The only thing he can control is the militia, and the only time he can bring up
Okay.
the militia is in a true emergency or
okay,
in times of
gotcha.
invasion or insurrection.
Okay, but what Stitt did, it was kind of dishonest. Well, I'll say it's
No,
dishonest.
it was totally dishonest.
That's harsh.
Let me say what it is, and then you can blast it. Most of what he wrote, when I actually went out and read the orders, it was all recommendations. Stitt actually allowed other people to take it and enforce it as law without telling them that, no, these are just recommendations.
Well,
And
the
it
only
was-
problem.
It
Well,
wasn't until very late, well, actually it was early in May, when they asked him, why aren't you wearing a mask? And he said, it's a personal preference. It was never more than a personal preference.
Right.
And so what Stitt is at fault for is allowing all these state and local agencies to act like they had the force of law and the governor backing them up. And the governor actually did not do any of those things.
Correct. And
You
that's
think that Stitt was under some pressure from the feds to do what he did, so he had to find a medium where he could take a road that allowed the feds to get what they wanted, that is, insinuate this is the rule, but then say it in a way that allowed him later to say, look, it's a recommendation.
I think he was under pressure from the phobics, which were the vast majority of our society. But he had the duty to say your phobia cannot overrule the rights of others. If you have a phobia, then you need to wear the plastic suit. If you're going to go out. Otherwise, you need to stay in, but they have the right to be out. And he never did that. That's the problem. That's
You
what
did Bynum.
I hold
You
him
did Bynum.
accountable. Well, Bynum went further. Bynum and
Bynum was
Holt and the mayor of Norman and Moore and all these other places, Altus and so on.
Well, what they did was they allowed state and local agencies to then use agency power to revoke your license
If you didn't comply.
Exactly.
Yes. And we saw the dental board do it. We saw the beauticians board, or the whatever that is for hairdressers.
Yes.
We saw them do it. The nail salons. I think it's the same people.
Yeah.
We saw that with the various. Remember, licensing is a lever for extortion, and they used it effectively. That should be the end of licensing.
Yeah. Well,
so
please.
We're at another 15-minute mark here with 3D Politics Live on Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. I'm Tommy McKay, your fine host. You can catch me at Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter. And I've got David Van from SoonerPolitics.org, and of course David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. We were lucky enough to have Ken Reddick, fine Tulsa mayoral candidate for this year's election 2020. And so we've got about 15 minutes left.
Yeah. So what I want to do is sweep
the Minneapolis council.
Want to sweep this over because it's a union thing there, and I'm predicting right now it's going to come down to a union narrative of the police officers union. Let's go to Minneapolis, okay? I want to bring up what's going on there, because you've got a city council that's hell bent on shutting down the entire police force, and I don't know what they're going to replace it with. So
the same.
I know exactly what they're doing. They're creating a void so that the federal government will move in. These people want a national government. They don't want a federation of states. They want one size fits all, one national movement, one national size fits all. So what they're doing is they're creating a void where the federal government has a public interest to move in. They want the feds to come do it.
Yeah. So, right now, and we're speculating on what the structure is going to be that replaces it. We don't know how they're going to pitch it. Tom, I think there's a lot of merit to the narrative you're saying there. But I reached out to Chuck Jordan, the longtime Tulsa police chief, through some other people. And there's a lot of cops that are saying this is absolutely asinine, and it's going to lead to an economic implosion in Minneapolis. Businesses are going to get the heck out of there. And much like what you saw for 20 years in Detroit. And I think what's going to happen is, if you'll remember last fall, when Trump decided to do a rally in downtown Minneapolis, and I predicted ahead of time, guys, there's going to be hell to pay for this. And it was Mayor Jacob Fry telling his cops, I'll fire you if you show up at that rally wearing a Minneapolis police uniform. And so there is a long time battle going on here. And folks, this is what we were teasing last week when we talked about, these liberal leftist cities that have been totally controlled by the leftists, and they have the worst racism. Then really, why were you running on that political platform of ending racism? And they want the issue. It's much like J.C. Watts said when they refused to let him join the Congressional Black Caucus. He says, they have their opinion, I have mine, and I believe they're a bunch of race-hustling poverty pimps. He said that.
You'll never accuse me of being a racist, but this guy in the picture, does he understand what a bare midriff is supposed to do? He's supposed to look good in a bare midriff. I'm a sexist, I'm a racist.
You said that's a guy.
You said that's a guy.
Hold on, you guys are slow. But anyway, look, if you're going to wear a bare midriff, whatever cisgender you are, let's have some abs. I mean, God almighty, that's pathetic. But anyway, I'm just judging on looks.
You are. I won't touch that.
I'm a sexist. Hell no, you won't touch
Not
it.
saying anymore.
Keep it moral and wholesome, and
Yeah.
I'll take all the cheap shots.
Well, we
Okay.
could get rid of the picture at this point.
Hell
Yeah, you're right. Let's do.
Trust me. Just
So,
show me a picture of something else.
okay. So my thing now, Minneapolis is different, folks. Do you know that the city of Tulsa proper is only about 5% smaller in population than the city of Minneapolis?
No.
Yes. Minneapolis about 420,000 at the last projected amount, whereas Tulsa's right at 400,000. So it's a 5% difference. The difference is the suburbs around Minneapolis. It's unbelievable. Minneapolis is 1/4 of the metro area population, just 25%.
Okay.
So you're going to see a flight into this massively developed network of suburbs. It's unbelievable how sprawling Minneapolis and St. Paul is. They're called the Twin Cities, okay? St. Paul's about 300,000. So, and the whole area is 1.6 million. So my point in all this
Why didn't they get Amazon?
Yeah, I know. My point in all this is it's a very unionized city. It's a Northern Union, Great Lakes, Rust Belt city. And you're going to see the police union try to get with the AFL-CIO and get all the manufacturing unions to back them up. You may see a strike very soon here. And this is going to be a big thing, and it's going to come down. And if it doesn't go right, remember, what's the name of the Democrat Party in Minnesota? The DFL, Democrat Farmer Labor Union, or Labor Party. So this could hugely split the Democrat Party, and Trump could take Minnesota by a high margin if this happens. So I'm just setting it up for you guys. Stay tuned. Get your popcorn out.
When you look at the discussions we're having from a higher level philosophical point of view, our founding fathers were brilliant in the way that they set this up so that it's not automatically law just rolling down all the way to your individual precincts. We have all these discussions of seeming obstacles to unity that are so beautiful, the gridlock we have, where thank God that each state is sovereign and thank God they all have their own little way, because otherwise we would all be lockstep into the Nazi routine immediately. And let's remember, Nazi doesn't mean Germany and it doesn't mean Hitler. It means National Socialists. For all you millennial morons out there who got born in the last 10 years and just tuned in, Nazi doesn't mean bad person. Nazi means national. There's only two things wrong with Nazis. They're nationalists, one, and they're socialists, two. Not necessarily in that order. So, anyway.
Yeah. So, go figure.
So, Minneapolis is going to vote out having a police department.
Well, they've already done that. And here's the thing. I would say, and the big question is, what's going to happen next? And I would say that what's going to happen next is they're going to reform, they're going to reorganize, and it's going to be more of the same. Or it's going to be structured improperly because it's going to have the wrong goals. Again, the problem here with everything that we're seeing is not racism. And we've talked about this already.
Right.
Racism, sure, but racism is a symptom of tyranny. It is an excuse to have tyranny, but tyranny is the ultimate problem. And so what we're going to see is they are going to create yet another tyrannical police force, because that's where they tend to end up. Because again, everybody in government is invested in keeping tyranny alive.
Right.
And because of that, what we're going to see is this dissolution of the police force, and the reconstruction of it is going to create it. It is going to create it in deception, even worse than it already was, but in deception. And I would hope that it would be different. But the real problem here is conservatives are not rising up and saying, yes, we need to have a reformation of the police department. Policing is out of control. They are doing everything unconstitutional all over the place. And we need a reformation of the judiciary and the prosecution and all of this. And we are not seeing that. The conservatives are not rising up. So what are we going to get? More of the same. The conservatives are going to be behind it. And along with the Democrats, they're going to be hand in hand, and we're going to have more tyranny.
What do you got, Dan?
Yeah, and here's some bit of advice for conservatives. Take a lesson from France. The labor unions there control France's economy, but they keep on electing these same leftist governments, the socialist governments, who then have fights against the labor union. And then you got these national strikes going on. And what you're seeing with Jacob Fry in the Minneapolis Police Department and all this is going on. If you're conservative, do not get in that fight. Let them fight each other. Okay.
Well, but the conservatives need to be out to, I mean, conservatives need to become constitutional. And the constitutionalists need to be standing up. But as happened this weekend with me out here where I'm at, conservatives wouldn't show up. The liberal socialists did, but the conservatives wouldn't.
Right. Yeah, but my point in all this is as soon as you get in that fight, they'll quit fighting each other and turn on you. Trump found that out when there was a deal between Nancy Pelosi and was the Gang of Four.
Yeah,
the woke pack. And all of a sudden he says something, all of a sudden they quit their little spat with each other and turn back on Trump. It's like, Trump, shut up. When you got them fighting each other, get the popcorn out.
Well, it's hard to argue with success. He's winning.
Well, I'm telling you, he missed an opportunity there.
He did screw that one up because he poked the bear at the wrong time.
Tom,
can I get us out with the court update?
Yeah, I wanna bring something up real quick. You guys know who Candace Owens is?
Sure.
She had a great one here recently because I as a comedic analyst have often stated the idea of this white privilege. I'm like, what is the exchange rate on white privilege and where do I turn it in? And how do I use it? Do I just roll through a red light and tell the cops, see me? I'm white, back off. And when I walk into the DMV, I'm like, oh, you colored people, step back, right? I'm going to move up because, well, look at me. I got white privilege, right? Because when we were at Veterans Park having a licensed meeting at a rally, we had zero white privilege. The cops let our event get wrecked. Okay.
By Antifa.
Down, okay, by Antifa. Okay, so there's no effing white privilege around here. Candace Owens, she says phrases like white privilege are just a modern twist on white supremacist ideology. Asking me to believe in white privilege means asking me to accept black inferiority, to look at a white person and recognize that I'm less than them in this world. How about no?
There you go.
Candace Owens, isn't she a doll?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, okay.
You want to hear about female privilege?
Yeah. And then before we get out, I've got to tell what I'm
okay.
Two more.
So here's our female privilege. This lady, Tulsa area, Berry Hill. Yeah, she hooked up with one of the boys in the high school and actually got another one of her girlfriends there for a three-way.
Yeah, proper lighting too. Good.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Every boy's dream.
Yes. Well, I don't think so. This is. I know where you're at on this, but as a parent, my God, there should be hell to pay on this. You try to protect your kids and get them to grow up right. This is statutory rape, but she got Steve Kunzweiler, to plead down to a misdemeanor charge and $100 fine And what was it? It was the Paul Tay conviction of, the public decency, insulting or enraging public decency.
Right.
And, like
He got 9 months, but she gets $100 fine.
And guess this, they're going to set it aside for a year. She can come back in a year and make a motion to maybe have it totally removed or to vacate her guilty plea.
So she got it set aside for a year, and who all did she have sex with?
Yeah. Well, and I have to say,
moved around, and who all she said?
Casey Roebuck, the public relations spokesperson at the jail, said, "We expect several more charges to be coming."
Sure.
And all of a sudden, nothing. And then during the pandemic is when they did this, and I missed it. Somehow in the paper shuffle, well, the courthouse is closed. This kind of thing goes on.
Were they wearing masks when they did it?
So, no, it was something that went on months earlier. But, my grandson lives just down the street from this teacher.
Hey, teachers are a lot like the pot industry. They shouldn't be allowed to have sex with their students within 1,000 feet of the school.
There you go. So anyway, the teachers
might not have.
Yeah. But you talk about female privilege. You and I both know a man doesn't get out of these with less than 6-7 years minimum.
And a lifetime sex offender registry.
There you go.
As improper and unconstitutional as that would be, but I don't understand.
A teacher has the power to pass or fail you, to screw up your public record,
like that. We got to get out of here. It's the last punch of the bottom of the hour. You're watching Tommy McKay with 3D Politics, both the Davids, David Van and David Oldham. And I just got to say, the Minneapolis Council voting to get rid of the police department, not only is it begging to bring a federalization to the state, but it's kind of like the schools. What they've done is they have abdicated their authority, and I would suggest that the cafeterias are feeding murder hornets. They don't even check who is getting the meals, and they continue to feed out-of-state protesters for all I know. And what I'm saying is, if you understand what they taught us during the Tulsa, the teachers walkout. When the teachers struck, they said, if you ever had a good plumber, thank a teacher. If you ever had a good anything in society, thank a teacher, because 90% of everybody goes through the process of American public schools. Where, my friends, if the police department is out of whack, blame the public school.
Yes,
and if people are burning down society because they don't know how to act like a decent human being, blame the public schools. If you got riots and civil unrest, you can blame the public schools. From Woodrow Wilson to LBJ, the school system has failed us. Institutionalized systemic socialism has failed us. The Great Society has failed us, and we are living a systemic socialism failure in America today. Tommy McKay, 3D Politics, that's all the time we got. Tune in again next week at 7 p.m. For 3D Politics Live.